Statistics South Africa recently revealed the national poverty lines for 2023. The lines contain both food and non-food components of household consumption expenditure. The numbers are important for planning, monitoring and evaluation for poverty reduction. We're now joined by Program Coordinator at Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, Mervyn, as well as Avashnee Naidu from KwaZulu-Natal Black Sash. Thank you very much to both our guests for your time this afternoon. Mr. Abrahams, perhaps let's start with you, because your organization mainly deals with the food basket. So when we take a look at these numbers, the food poverty line is now 760 Rand per person per month, which is 25 Rand a day, which is up from 663 Rand, commonly referred to as the extreme poverty line. This is money that an individual needs to afford the minimum requirement daily energy intake versus reality. Just how accurate is this from the work that you do?
So good afternoon, Dudu, and good afternoon to all your viewers. Thanks for having us on. I think the first thing we need to say is that we need to congratulate Stats SA for having increased the poverty line much more in line with actual food inflation. In the past, it was always the CPI, and we know that food inflation often runs higher than other goods and services. So it is a 14.6% increase in the food poverty line, and that in itself statistically is significant. But when we talk about actual numbers of people in South Africa, then we acknowledge that about 25% of the population will live below that 763 Rand per month. So poverty will continue to increase. And it's increasing also largely because wages are so low. So if you take, for instance, a national minimum wage of about 4,500, you divide that by a household of about 4, and then you get to just over 1,200 or 300 Rand, which actually is not sufficient to be able to purchase the number of food items that households require. So statistically it is significant, but in reality we will continue to see hunger and poverty continue to spread in South Africa because there's not sufficient income coming in to purchase the food that is required.
Ms. Naidu, Mr. Abrahams speaks of income, and Stats SA also spoke about grants being the second most important source of income, amounting or coming to 50.2% for households after salaries, 59.7%, and that was in 2022. Given the marginal increases that people get in the forms of grants, reports like these come out, and you think what?
So as the Black Sash, we definitely realize the impact that this is going to have on households. From 663 Rand to 760 Rand, it's a serious increase in terms of the reality of what the food inflation has been on the ground. This further erodes these minimal increases that have been given to grant beneficiaries. In April of this year, we shall see some of the grants getting a further 10 Rand in October of this year. But with regard to the increase that we've seen in terms of the food poverty line, this absolutely has no impact in households. It means that more people are going to actually be pushed to the edges of hunger and inequality in our country. Linked to that is the amount that is given to the SRD 350 Rand grant. From the time of its inception in May 2020, the amount of this grant was 350 Rand, and it has not increased, irrespective of the food inflation that we've seen over the years. And if you actually calculate what this means, that the food poverty line is actually the minimum amount of food that an individual needs to eat within a month in order to survive. And the 350 Rand is actually even less than half of that amount. So this is actually critical, and Black Sash's message to government is that this is why we need a form of permanent basic income support that will allow further income to come into households and also to increase the value of the existing SRD 350 Rand grant, to take into consideration these constant increases in food inflation that we are seeing in South Africa.
Thank you very much to both our guests. Unfortunately, that's all the time we can afford this afternoon. Mervyn Abrahams and Avashnee Naidu from KwaZulu-Natal Black Sash. Thank you.